We hope everyone has had a great year celebrating the Year of the Wood Dragon. To celebrate this year, we have a special creature collection. This video is going to break down some different types of dragons, where they come from, some traits they have unique to them, and some examples of how to use that dragon in your own creations. Dragons are the king of mythological creatures, a powerful and protective beast that has been popular in stories, television, and film. If you are a fan of fantasy or a master of mythology, you know there are many different types of dragons based on culture, language, translation, and even speculations based on ancient eyewitness accounts. Even though many of these creatures fall under the umbrella term of dragon, they each have their own rich and unique history. If you are from the Western world, chances are you are used to seeing dragons depicted as evil or destructive. They require a knight to slay them in order to save the kingdom. If you are closer to the Eastern world, dragons may have played an entirely different role in your myths and legends. They are protective guides from the celestial realm that deserve to be worshipped. One of the earliest recorded depictions of dragons come from Mesopotamian art, where the dragon is depicted as giant snakes. One of the most famous hails from the Mesopotamian creation myth from the 2nd millennium BC, called the Enuma Elish. Some historians theorize that the Western dragon originated from the Nile crocodile, migrating to Greece and Italy. These crocodiles could elevate their bodies enough to crawl from the water and walk on land, much like how dragons were depicted. In the Native Americas, Quetzalcoatl is arguably the most famous of the dragon-esque creatures. Known to the Aztecs as the feathered serpent god, creator of mankind, Quetzalcoatl has physical attributes of what modern people associate with the dragon. But what is a dragon? Honestly, it isn't a very easy answer. There aren't too many cut and dry definitions of dragon. This is because nearly every culture across the world has some sort of dragon, and because of cultural, geographical, storytelling styles, and translation of language, there are many answers to what a dragon could be. Oftentimes they are large, intelligent, and reptilian. But as for all of the details, personalities, and aesthetics, these all change depending on what type of dragon you are looking at and from which culture it came from. No matter where in the world you are from, dragon lore weaves a tapestry of rich and exciting opportunities to create your own stories. While there are many types of dragons, I will only be going over some of the more popular. If you would like to see more on dragons and some of the smaller, more bizarre breeds, leave a comment below. First is the Eastern dragon. This is a blanket term for dragons that fall east of the Caspian Sea. These dragons are called lung dragons. Depicted as long and serpentine with 4 legs, exaggerated eyes, and a long mane around their face. This is the image of a dragon that Imperial China during the Tang Dynasty chose to depict strength, honor, and power. There are variations of this dragon as well. It may be viewed with horns, fins, or even a turtle shell. There are 8 types of lung dragons that show off these variations. The Yu-Lung is the carp dragon. This is the larval stage that will eventually become any one of the rest of the lung dragons. One example of the Yu-Lung is The Adventures of Little Carp. This anime is about a carp named Bubbles who lives in Carp Lake with his grandmother. Bubbles can blow bubbles and grow wings. This brave and loyal little carp encounters an evil snake who pretends to be the Dragon King. If using this dragon in your own creation, remember that it is a young dragon. Naivety and youth are going to help in the character identification. Qiang Lung is the river dragon. They could grow up to 158 feet in length and had scales that were various shades of green or blue with a yellow underside. They had long white horns on their head, and adults had multicolored beards. They are polymorphous and often prefer time in their human form. Think of Haku from Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away. Li Lung is the earth dragon, growing up to 120 feet in length. Unlike most of the other dragons, earth dragons do not have scales, but rather are covered in thick, wire-like hair. It has the body and tail of a lion with a human-like face. It can also have colorful peacock feathers on its tail, and is the only lung dragon to have wings. Lung Wang is the sea dragon growing up to 135 feet. Lung Wangs were a distant relative of dragon turtles. They have a large shell that is covered in thick green and silver scales. Covering its head and down its neck are smaller green and gold scales. Its front legs are large flippers, and each had two extremely sharp talons at the end. A Lung Wang's head resembled that of a Shen Lung, with long, flowing golden whiskers. Think of Bowser from the Mario game franchise. Pan Lung is the coiled dragon that will grow to 142 feet long. Unlike many of the other dragons, Pan Lungs had a diet mainly of fruits and vegetables. They grew large, intricate gardens that they would have servants tend to. Although they are born with gray scales, they can develop scales in a number of colors. It has very oily scales, making their body shimmer in the sunlight, a polychromatic mane that surrounded its neck, and dark whiskers. While Pan Lung is an herbivore, it is ruthless in battle techniques, often constricting their victim to death with their tails. Shen Lung is the spirit dragon, also known as the god of dragons. They are shorter and thicker than the Pan Lung, but can still grow to nearly 151 feet long. As young dragons, their scales are dull in color, but as they age, their scales become luminous and bright. They also develop ridges along their back, a spiked tail, two horns on top of their head, and golden whiskers. Unlike other types of dragon personalities, the Shen Lung is modest and have the ability to maintain cordial relationships with nature spirits. They have a very strong fascination with humans and will often take human form in villages to observe them. Villagers saw them as messengers of the gods and would build temples and shrines to these dragons. Tianlong is the celestial dragon and can grow up to 155 feet in length. Their young scales are a dull, buttery yellow that grow to be a brilliant and vibrant gold yellow that emitted an aroma similar to cherry blossoms. They had polychromatic beards, manes, and whiskers. Their whiskers were long and rose over their heads like horns. While beautiful, these dragons are often arrogant and smug, but very noble. While the Tianlong did not have wings, it was able to fly due to a yellow pearl in its head, and would often be attacked by the Panlung due to jealousy. Tunmi Lung is the Typhoon Dragon. The largest of the lung dragons, Tunmi Lungs were distinguished by their size, up to 167 feet in length. They had thick scales that appeared in various colors. They had small dark eyes and a wispy beard under their jaws, which were lined with razor-sharp teeth. These dragons are antagonistic, malicious, and wild. They were disliked by many creatures and other dragons alike because of their nature and the lack of respect they had for the territory of other dragons. Some examples of the lung dragon are Falcor from the Neverending Story. While he is commonly mistaken for a dog, he is a luck dragon. His appearance of a long, snake-like body, 4 legs, no wings, and a positive symbol within the film align with the lung dragon's lore. And, spoiler alert, Zelda's dragon form from Tears of the Kingdom is a beautiful depiction of the lung dragon. Western dragons are often called the true dragon due to their depiction of being the most powerful of dragon species. This depiction of a dragon is anywhere west of the Caspian Sea, and is also referred to as the European dragon. They are the fire-breathing winged creatures we are familiar with in the West, from most fairy tales. They are depicted with 6 full appendages, including 4 legs and 2 wings. Western dragons are your typical mythical fire dragon types. Western dragons can breathe fire, as depicted in many folklore and modern fantasy novels. Painters and storytellers spoke often of the European dragons in the form of a Western dragon. These dragons are often mistaken for the Wyvern, which only has 4 limbs instead of 6. Some examples of this dragon are Maleficent's dragon form, Draco from Dragonheart, and Bahamut from Final Fantasy. Just like how Eastern dragons have many different subspecies, the same goes for the Western dragon. The Pyrosta is the smallest Western dragon, also known as a fairy dragon. These dragons still have 4 limbs, however their wings are often depicted more similar to that of moths and butterflies. They have large black eyes and cannot stray too far away from fire. They are chaotic good and extremely intelligent and are capable of speech. An example of these dragons would be the Terrible Terror from How to Train Your Dragon. Worm dragons are European dragons that do not have legs or wings. This dragon is also of high intelligence with the ability to speak. While many dragons in the east that look like this live in the water, the worm prefers to live in the earth, often found burrowing in mountain caves. These creatures have poisonous breath and often prey on humans for food. A popular representation of this dragon can be found in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game. The Lindwurmbrunnen is similar to the worm, however it does have 2 legs near the front of its body. They have a scaly serpentine body that moves more like a lizard. It was speculated that lindworms would devour corpses as it traveled underground. Some examples of the lindworm would be the Klagenfurt lindworm from 13th century Austria. This dragon was said to be very destructive. A duke offered a reward for anyone who was brave enough to catch it. The legend goes that he was caught like a fish and destroyed. There is also fictional representation of the lindworm. In the film Lair of the White Worm, featuring Catherine Oxenberg, Peter Capaldi, and Hugh Grant, this 1988 English horror film depicts the idea that a mythical beast may be living on their farm, and the hunt ensues. And even in modern kids' cartoons like Hilda, there is representation of the lindworm. A wyvern is one of the most popular dragons that are often confused with the Western dragon. They have long necks and diamond-like shapes on the end of their tails, which are used as a weapon. Their wings are large and they have 2 legs. Many wyverns are used as a symbol of war, power, and heraldry. Many families use them as a part of their insignia to represent valor, protection, and honor. They are used frequently in many movies, TV shows, and storytelling. Some examples of the wyvern can be found in The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, Smaug from the Hobbit series, and the Hungarian Horntail from Harry Potter. In the Americas, dragons are much more colorful and unique looking when compared to the European and Eastern dragons. Many times they are depicted with colorful feathers in their mane and continuing onto their bodies, oftentimes making them look more bird-like in appearance. Amphipteres are used in similar ways as the wyvern, however they are depicted with only 2 wings and no legs. Many of these dragons are revered as gods. There are also other representations of the amphipteres, like the Duke of Gesver's dragon and the House of Potier's dragon, both using this dragon in their coat of arms. In India, the Naga is a dragon that is depicted similar to the lung dragons. These dragons have been depicted with no wings and no legs, however they can have multiple heads. The Naga is depicted with a corona of golden flames on top of their heads like a crown. Some Nagas are also depicted as half-human. They are divine creatures that are powerful and beautiful. They are mostly good-natured towards humans, and only become deadly when provoked. Some examples in myth of this dragon are Apalala, who is a water-dwelling Naga in Buddhist myths. He is said to live near the Swat River and is responsible for the flow of the river. Shesha in Hindu myth is the king of the Naga, and one of the primal beings of the creation myth. The drake is a wingless dragon with 4 legs. Sometimes these dragons are associated with premature dragons or young dragons. However, they are a bit different. There are 2 main classifications of drakes. First are the cold drakes. These dragons are usually white or blue in color and have the ability to breathe ice instead of fire. Fire drakes are usually red, orange, or yellow with the ability to breathe fire. Some well-known drakes are Charmeleon from Pokemon, Agumon from Digimon, and Bolt Drake from Final Fantasy. Zmai dragons, also known as Slavic dragons, derive from Russian folklore. In many stories, the Zmai are depicted as human with dragon personalities and abilities. But they can also be represented with red and green scales, claws made of iron, and sometimes multiple heads. These dragons are known for abducting princesses, flying long distances, and battling humans. Some popular Zmai dragons you'll find are King Ghidorah from Godzilla, Tiamat from Final Fantasy, and even Snaptrapper from How to Train Your Dragon. The Hydra, while similar to the Zmai, is incapable of shape-shifting. The Hydra is a multi-headed dragon that is admittedly much larger than a Western dragon. These dragons are notoriously difficult to defeat and can have not only multiple heads, but multiple tails, arms, and legs. These extra extremities regrow in multiples when they have been cut off. Arguably the most famous Hydra is the Lernian Hydra, known as the Excedra, the offspring of Echidna and Typhoon. It had 50,000 heads and belonged to the Trail of Heracles. You can also find the Hydra in God of War and Kingdom Hearts 2. As you can see, there are so many possibilities for utilizing a dragon in one of your creations. If your creature has a reptilian feature, chances are it may fall into the category of dragon. There are hundreds of dragons throughout myths and legends across the globe, but these were some that stood out. If you are utilizing this king of creatures in a story, game, or other media, and you want it to be accurate to a region, be sure to show or describe the shape, color, and most importantly the personality of your beast. These are what make each dragon unique. We hope the Year of the Dragon brought you prosperity, success, and luck. And we are looking forward to the Year of the Wood Snake.